Hey everyone, it's Dr. West. We're talking about Band-Aid healers, and I'm excited to have someone we work together, someone I've known for a long time, very gifted healer, Dr. Scott Nelson. Dr. Scott, thank you for being on the program, and I'm excited to pull out some knowledge out of that gray cranium over there.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, so you've been in healthcare longer than a year.
Just a few.
Okay,
Yes.
So how long have you been in the trenches?
This year, starting in January, will be 45 years.
Okay, so 45 years, 4.5 decades, not trying to make you feel long in the tooth, but 45 decades, 45 years, 4.5 decades. You've probably seen just about everything.
Seen a bunch of things.
Yes. And from a doctor-patient perspective, like what do you wish people knew when it comes to health? I mean, you've seen probably generations of patients in that time period, but what do you wish people knew about health?
Well, I think the biggest problem is that just people don't realize that they actually have to do something to maintain health.
Yeah,
They just kind of think, well, I'm in my 20s, I'm in my 30s, I'm bomb-proof, I don't have to do anything, you know. They got that invincible thing, and then you hit the 40 to 50, and it's like, oh, now I got to actually maybe do something. And then when you hit over the 60 mark, that's like, no, now I really have to do something. And it's kind of, you're always behind the curve rather than trying to get people to realize when they're younger is take care of yourself.
That is the truth. I've had so many people. I've had people just today. I had a guy say, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. I didn't know that breaking bones in your 20s is really going to affect me in my 70s.
Well, that's the sad part that I see probably in the worst case scenarios in high school athletics. You know, early years athletics with kids is they're wanting these kids to do things that their little bodies aren't really ready for and put a lot of stress on them and wanting to play when they're hurt, and they want them to do all these things, and it's like, man, you know, this is just such a short period of your life. You're going to be paying for this. I mean, I've got patients that I went to high school with that are still dealing with their busted up knees and their all those things, accidents that they had in high school, and that, you know, now they're 60, 70 years old, and they're still fighting that process. So I guess my biggest thing is when you're younger, you got to take care of yourself. You know, you're going to pay the price for those injuries.
Now, one of the reasons why you've seen so much is because you have multiple degrees.
Yes.
So you started off at Western States, and what degree did you get there?
I got my doctorate of chiropractic at Western States.
And then somehow in that early, and sometime during that process, you got exposed to acupuncture. You've done a lot of acupuncture education. What was the exposure? How did you get into acupuncture?
Well, actually, I got exposed to acupuncture back in the early 70s, actually, when my dad, who was also a naturopath, in fact, Darth and Art were all part of that thing, and we had a doctor come over from China to teach classes actually here in Pocatello. And Dad being blind, I was always his eyes, so I took him everywhere. So that's when my acupuncture training started, was in the class with them.
Now, numerous times you've told me if you were stuck on an island or in the wilderness and you could only have one modality, it would be acupuncture. That's what you would pick.
Yes.
And why would you pick that?
I would pick it because you can treat anything with it. I mean, really, the principles of acupuncture and those in Chinese medicine, you really can take care of anything. It may not be the fastest and quickest, but you can definitely take care of it.
So is there a condition that makes you happy that comes in because you know acupuncture is going to be really useful for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's when you kind of put it that way. I've never kind of thought in my life, well, yeah, when those guys come in, low back comes in my office, I got it hammered. It's
Right.
going to come in. It's just going to come. We're going to do it. It's going to fix and go out.
Well,
So,
this is one of the things I've really admired about you, because you don't have a back protocol. Like, you're like, I do the protocols that I am inspired or that I intuitively feel. I'll put a needle in this point or that point. And so for people out there that are curious about the acupuncture, you got your doctorate, you got some postgraduate training in acupuncture, you're the eyes for your dad. And if someone said, Dr. Nelson, just tell me how it works, like, what would you say?
it balances the yin and yang is probably the simplest thing. You have just like light and dark, hot, cold. Acupuncture is just in those principles of extremes, hot, and that balance is what keeps our bodies healthy and keeps them functioning. It's just kind of like the world outside. If the sun shined all the time, we'd be dead. And conversely, if it was night all the time, we'd be dead. So there has to be that balance, that transition between the extremes, that once we get that balance, then life is good. Things grow, we harvest, we go through life, and that's really the principles in acupuncture is built around that agronomic society, and that a lot of the principles that we think about in acupuncture, we talk about, a spring or a stream or a river or a well. Those are all related to things that you would see in a farming community and that type of thing. So you would get just a little bit of water out of a well, but you went down to the stream and there was a whole bunch of water, and let alone go to the ocean where there was just millions of gallons of water. And so the principles of creating movement of water, for instance, in our body, are we moving a little bit? Do we want to move a little bit more, or are we moving a whole bunch? And so that's where those principles came about as far as the different elements, what they control, and how we go about fixing things.
And you frequently said that the acupuncture, the energy, the yin-yang balance, there's a component of the calendar or the yearly system, because you've told me, this month we need to, it's a liver month, or kidney does this. I don't remember all of them, but there is a year and acupuncture connection, right?
Right.
Or time of the year, that's what I meant.
Yeah, there's a time of the year that each system is more active. There's also a time of the day that things are more active. And so we have micro systems, and then we have the macro system. And the macro system of the time of year is, for instance, gallbladder and liver is the spring. That season is the spring, and the color of gallbladder and liver in Chinese is green. And we think of emergence of energy coming up, grass getting grow, things starting to sprout, coming forth, life coming out of it. And so each system has its time of year where it's the most active, and if we treat according to that, and realizing that our system has to go through a yearly cycle, just as it goes through a 24-hour cycle. And if we think that we're going to, in Chinese medicine, when they think of treatment time, they think of treatment time in cycles of the year, not just, you'll be better in 2 weeks. We got to work through this for a long period of time, take you through those seasons, make sure everything stays in balance.
And there are, 1,000-something points? I don't remember the exact number. I used to know, but how many acupuncture points? Well, when I say that,
typically the main ones, there's like 365 points, which is kind of relates to the days of the calendar year. But really, an acupuncture point can be any place you place a needle, right? Any ashi point, any tender point, and then there's different systems that have been developed over the years and centuries that have variations of those points.
And is there any points that are kind of your favorite, where there's a name or a story behind them? It's like, I'm always going to treat people with, this point. Well,
yeah, that has kind of evolved over the years. I went from pretty traditional to, I've tried different types of mirror imaging and different things like that. And lately, I guess I've been really impressed with abdominal acupuncture, and being able to basically treat any part of the body from the abdominal area. And I've seen some great success with it. And it's something, not many people do, and been really pleasantly surprised what we can do with it.
So it's not just acupuncture. You're not a one-trick pony. You've got acupuncture, you have your hands, your chiropractic, your naturopathic, your nutrition component. So how do you decide what to use for someone?
I think that's the big thing, is you use it all. There isn't a decision between, well, I can only use chiropractic, or I can only use acupuncture, I can only use the other. You want to blend them together, and so that it becomes a situation where people many times ask, well, what technique do you use? Well, I use the Scott Nelson technique. Yeah. I mean, I use whatever is in the brain, whatever I've learned over these course of years, and that's what I use to do it. I use these other things and other tools to help me kind of narrow down to where that problem is coming from. And I think over the experience of years and treating patients, you kind of realize, oh, I've seen this before. I've been through this before. I kind of know which direction this is going to take me. And at least it gets you a head start in that area.
Well, with that in mind, how about, let's also add in some of your repertoire about injections, because I kind of think we went to the same neural prolotherapy or injection course, and I want to say about 2012 or something like that. We went up to Seattle and we did a course there, and that was fascinating to me because my dad did not like needles. I didn't know this, but obviously in our office now, everything is needle-based. It's injections, it's IVs, it's acupuncture. Yes, we do chiropractic. Yes, we do endonasal. Yes, we do therapies. But what was your curiosity? Why did you decide to add an injection component to your repertoire?
Actually, the injection part actually started from the very beginning. Because when I went to Western States in the late 70s, at that time in Oregon, we could do minor surgery, obstetrics, we could do all those things. And so really, injections, we learned how to do injections. We learned how to do minor surgery technique. We learned how to set IVs. We learned how to do all those things. And so that has always been part of my thought process. I've been there before. The question really came about as far as what we were able to do in the state. How the law in the state changed from yes, it's okay, or no, it's not okay, or yes, it's okay, and that process of going through and increasing it. But it's always been part of it, and being able to utilize those things. I always felt like we were a little bit hamstrung in some of the early days, in that we had all this stuff available to us, but the law wouldn't allow us to use those things.
Right. So you were trained for things that in Oregon that you necessarily couldn't do in Idaho.
Right.
And then filling out this broad, chiropractic physician, naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, nutritionist, being able to do all these things. Do you feel where do you fit in the healthcare spectrum? I'm asking this question kind of for me too, because I don't know. Do you fit in the chiropractic world? Do you fit in the naturopathic world? Where does Scott Nelson fit in the spectrum?
It's kind of funny you ask, because when people ask me, what do you do? And a lot of people just say, well, what do you do? And for a lot of years, well, I'm a chiropractor. And lately, they say, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm in alternative medicine.
Yeah, I say functional, but
I'm just in alternative medicine. And they go, well, what's that? Well, it's all these things combined, and mostly it's thinking out of the box. Really, when you think about what we do and why we are successful in what we do, is we're not hampered by being confined to a specific box. We kind of take that idea of the scientific procedure, and you take principles that you learn and apply them maybe in a different situation. Yeah, it works over here, but well, why couldn't it work over here? And we apply those principles to various ways of doing things, and you see if it's going to work. You know, sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't work as great. But our biggest thing is that we want to do things in a way that we don't create harm. You know, we may do things outside the box, but in that same process, we don't want to hurt somebody in the process of doing it. You know, in medicine, they just call all that stuff off-labeling. You know, they say they take something that's, well, this is for your heart. Well, we're going to use it for your pain in your big toe kind of thing. But the problem with off-labeling of drugs is there's always a component of risk anytime you take a drug. But if we're doing more of a natural nutritional thing, or we're doing things that we create an environment where we don't want to create a problem in trying to find the solution.
How about your place in the interaction with other, I would say, kind of traditional providers? Have you faced challenges? Do you have good relationships over there in the traditional medical world?
Yeah, that's kind of been a little bit of a sore spot for me in that I grew up in a family where my dad was a naturopath, and that in the early 60s, 70s, that wasn't a really popular thing to be doing, and I remember one of the medical doctors in the town had told my dad, he says, well, I wish you weren't here. And he goes, well, best, if you were doing and got everybody better, I wouldn't be here. But because you can't, that's why I'm here. And so I think that's been kind of a little bit of my thing over the years is, yes, it's getting better. I think medicine in general is a little more open-minded to something other than just a pill or just surgery or just saying. So I think they're just seeing that there's maybe some opening for other things. Now all of a sudden vitamins might be a good thing. And we'll even prescribe some vitamins. And before, man, if you've been in this business long enough, like 40 years ago, that was like, no, that wasn't going to happen. Those things will kill you.
So one of the reasons I wanted to put this together is I'm having all of these different backgrounds come together. It's so fascinating hearing people's backstory. And if there was a medical doctor that was open-minded, that wanted to be aware of acupuncture, of chiropractic, of advanced nutritional methods, didn't necessarily want to do them, what would you suggest to the person listening of how to open up a dialogue with you or someone like you coming from the other side of the fence, coming over and saying, hey, I just want to know what Dr. Nelson's doing so that I can send people over there. But we're not taught really, we in the alternative space, we're not really taught how to build relationships in the medical world. At least this is what I feel.
Yeah, it's hard because you'll find that I did it. You had to do it more on an individual basis. With we had it when I was in Blackfoot, I had a DO that I worked with, and his practice was mostly an OB practice. But even being a DO, he didn't want to do the adjusting part, but he saw that there was a big improvement for pregnant ladies to be adjusted and to have those corrections done, and so he would refer them over to me, and I would do my thing, and then I'd refer them back to him. I think the problem was in some of the early days was having that communication to where, okay, if I refer things to you, then you need to reciprocate and send things back to me. And if we can do that, we start working together. But it can't always be a one-way street. And it was like, well, many times I needed to send somebody to a medical doctor for certain procedures, and I would send a patient to them, and then I'd never see him again. And I'd find, well, what's going on? Oh, well, they said not to go back. Yeah, and I think that's where the rub was always there, was that you've got to have respect for both people, have respect for each other of what you do, realizing that's great. I can't do that, but you also can't do what I do. And so we have to have respect.
Yes, and that being said, I can remember my dad, one of his advice to me, which I believe that you live this, but he'd say, hey, Jason, when you're really comfortable in your own skin, in your own skill set, then you don't have that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm not being accepted by the medical community. And 45 years into practice, I think you live that. Don't you feel that you're really comfortable with your clinical skill set?
I am. In fact, I think one of the kind of the funny things was and it's been probably 20 years ago probably that one of the local hospitals wanted to know if I'd be on staff there, and I which was really kind of a pretty big honor, a pretty big feather in my cap, and I was talking with this, says, it'd be really great to do it, but you know what? I don't want to be tied to that like you guys are. I want to be able to go home. I want to be able to not be on call 24/7. I don't want to, to me, that wasn't, and I don't want to necessarily be involved in the trauma, acute trauma. You got to be, all those types of things. And so, I really appreciate it, but no, I don't think so. I really like what I'm doing. I enjoy what I'm doing, and I probably should have, but my personality has always been. My wife has always said that in my whole years of practice that I've been kind of semi-retired. There's been more things. There's things outside of the office and outside of healthcare that can be just as important in your life as doing healthcare.
Yeah, which I would totally recognize. It's your family, it's your wife, it's some of these things that allow you to recharge. It's the building of the vans. It's going to your nomadic. Hey, we're going to travel down to here or to there. That being said, with having a life outside of the practice, with people that are frustrated with a quote a traditional approach, there, and with the corollary I'm trying to make is they've kind of been outside of our office or offices that are like ours, that want to see what we offer. If someone's thinking, I want to check out, I want something different than a prescription, I want to do something different than a surgery, or this pill that I'm taking, I'm just plateauing. What advice or recommendations would you give to that person that's searching for something different?
Probably just kind of do your research in that, what are you really wanting, and look around. I think the thing is not everybody has all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I can't fix everything.
I agree. There
are some things that it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not your guy. There may be somebody somewhere. I've always been a true believer that I may not know how to do it, but somebody someplace is going to know how to do this. And finding that can be quite a journey for a lot of people. We can do a lot of things, and I can help a lot of people, but there are some things I can't do.
And in your career pathway, you have fulfillment as a chiropractic physician. You love and you're passionate about acupuncture. You're no slouch when it comes to nutrition. What are some of the lessons or I guess different viewpoints that we provide patients looking for answers? For example, a lot of especially the ER urgent care doctors give people a muscle relaxer or a painkiller and kind of hope that it resolves on its own, or they'll say, follow up with your primary care. And what our goal has been, hey, what's wrong? Like, what can we find the cause, and can we fix that cause? And we've talked numerous times about our expectations or what we think is going to happen when people come in, because we kind of expect them to have improvement. They may not be cured. Is there any, the things that you would speak to with like, hey, we are looking for the cause or the trigger, the insufficiency, versus take 2 of these and we'll see you in a couple of weeks?
Well, I think you hit it on the head there. Part of the expectations is we expect you to get better. I mean, really, when you go into, to some healthcare areas, it's like we just are here to manage the problem. We don't expect you to ever get better. We're just going to manage it and keep you happy and keep you, quote, pain-free or functional, kind of thing. And I guess we've always been in the business of, well, no, I think you need to get better. I guess I've kind of always been somewhat of a interesting person. So I like seeing you, but I don't want to see you all the time. You come in with a low back problem. I need to get you fixed because I love seeing you. I love talking with you, but I don't want you in my office every day for the next 10 years. I want you to better. I want you to go and I want you doing your life, doing other things. And so I guess that's our expectations for us is, we see a lot of things, but in the same mode, we expect them to get better or at least change. I think the hardest thing is when you don't see any movement, whether it's good or bad. Even bad movement, even increase in symptoms means that something has changed. Something means your body is responding. It's doing something. I think the hardest patients to deal with are ones that don't ever move. The needle doesn't move.
I would agree. Now, you did 35 years mostly on your own, and then we combined forces. Has it been 10 years? It's almost 10 years.
10 years.
And so just speak to that for a minute of what it was like coming from a solo environment to, we got a lot of estrogen in the office. We got a lot of
Yes, we do.
we have some great people in there, but my son was asking me the other day, Dad, what's the hardest part of being a practice? And, he graduates next year, and he was expecting me to say missing a diagnosis, not knowing what, rat body erosions are on an x-ray, not knowing what this beating is a blood test. And I kind of surprised him. I said, no, like if your team if your front desk doesn't get along with your back office, like there's hell to pay. It doesn't work very well. But just for a minute to, why did you decide to combine forces, and what's it been like being in a bigger team environment?
Well, when I first started practice, I told Dad when I graduated that I'd work for him for 5 years, and so we worked together for 5 years. I practiced with my dad for 5 years, and about that time, my mother passed away. Dad remarried, moved to a different place, so that kind of broke up the partnership, so to speak. And so then I went on my own, and Dad and I collaborated over the whole time, but pretty much I was in my own practice, and my wife was my front desk and my business manager, and all that kind of thing. And it was a fairly smaller practice. I didn't go crazy, and you've got to learn how to get along with people, especially if your wife's in the front desk. You don't go to the office and be mean to her at the office and then go home and expect her to really like you. So I think that in those 35 years, realizing that your people skills have to change and you have to be able to get along, because one of the big things when I came into your office, now we've got 12 girls, 10 girls? 10 women that you have to learn how to get along with. And
it's uncomfortable if you don't.
Yeah.
If you get crossways.
Yeah, you don't want them mad at you. And so, and that's, I'm saying that kind of funny wise, but I mean, really appreciate their efforts and what they do in keeping us going. But I think the big thing was I really wasn't looking to change what I was doing. And I remember when you called me up and was it 10 o'clock at night on a weekday? It was like, hey, I got to talk to you. And it's like, oh, okay. Because we'd been doing a lot of things together. And he came over and, hey, I'm going to hire somebody, but I'd like to have you. And I go, wow. Yeah, but I got an office. I got a practice. I'm doing this. And, man, I got to think about this a little bit. And so it was a big change, a big thought process on my end. Do I want to give up what I have here for the opportunity to get into a bigger practice, have multiple docs there. At the time, you had some other people that were in the office. It was a bigger, we had some things going on, and it was an opportunity. Sometimes when you're by yourself all the time, it's kind of nice to be able to talk to somebody and say, well, what do you think about this problem? What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's nice.
And so it was a kind of a change, and there were things in my office that I was going to have to redo. Obamacare came in, and that screwed everything out. And so I think the timing was perfect. It was the right thing to do, and it gave me an opportunity to move into a different chapter. And I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Now, as we're kind of winding things down a little bit, I usually tell people there's rules of health. Go to bed at the same time, drink water, healthy and live foods. If you were to summarize the rules of health for someone inside of our ecosystem, a patient saying, hey, I just want to be healthy, what would be kind of your quick point summary of telling that person, you should do A, B, C? What are those?
I would say de-stress your life. That's the biggest thing that I see.
And how do you do that?
Is you have to decide what's important. There's a lot of things that are stressful in our life that are not important. And I had to learn early in my life I had basically set some rules for myself. And if it didn't follow this particular rule, I just didn't worry about it. It wasn't important, And I think that's the problem people have is they place way too much importance on minutia. And that requires a lot of energy. And we see a lot of adrenal fatigue. We see a lot of hormone problems because of that. So, number one, I think when I first started practice in 1980, I think stress was probably fifth down the list of things to worry about. Now it's number one. I mean, really, people are stressed out. They're on their phones, they're on their everything. They're so plugged in that they can't think. Everything's there, and it's almost too much information. So, de-stress, get some sleep. People don't sleep, and Dad always told me, he says, every hour before midnight's worth 2 hours after. So get some sleep, get your 7 to 8 hours of sleep in. Your body has to recharge. That's when it gets better. That's when it heals. Other than, a good diet. But I think the other thing is typically people don't drink enough water. They don't keep their kidneys happy. And in Chinese medicine, our kidney is our batteries. If you think of the battery of your car or battery, you got to keep that thing charged. Because if it dies, things don't work. So keeping that going, I think, is probably the biggest thing. But we live way too stressful in our life. You got to unplug. I mean, there's a lot of days I leave my phone home. I mean, I think I woke yesterday. My daughter wanted to come down and get treated, and finally she texts her mom and says, "Dad's not answering his phone. Where is he?" And she goes, "Well, he's right here." But yeah, it's 10, 11 o'clock in the day, and I haven't even looked at the thing yet. And so I think that's the big thing: is de-stress, unplug, get some
charge
quiet,
your batteries,
get some quiet time. A little meditation, a little thought process will help.
Yeah, I read that book, The Comfort Crisis, and one of the things saying if your life's too easy, you're going to be sick. You have to have something. And one of his challenges was it's important to be bored. It's important to be disconnected, where it's just you on that. A quick diet follow-up, because everybody comes in and says the watermelon diet, the keto diet, the paleo diet, the all healthy foods diet, the Oprah diet, the Atkins diet. I know no diet works for everyone, but general rule diets, what would be your advice to people?
Watch what goes between your teeth. It's what goes in your mouth. That's really the diet. There's no, in my experience of it, there's no magic bullet. You know, there's too many. You gotta watch what you're eating. You know, eating healthy foods. You know, doing your exercise, getting your sleep, de-stress, doing those things. Those are all things that happen. And then the other problem that society is putting on us is society forgets to think about one of the things, and that's genetics. You know, if my genetics say I'm going to be 6'6", and I'm saying no, I want to be 5'6", you're fighting against genetics the whole time. You know, and so you got to realize that there's certain things that you can change, but there's some things you can't change. It's just programmed into your system. You're going to be a certain way whether you like it or not. Now you can force your body, but when people force their body to do something, there's always a consequence. There's always a problem for it. And so I guess my biggest thing when it comes to diet is try to eat as well as you can, drink as well as you can, and when you eat something and you're saying, and this is just me, I have no documentation on how, scientific matter on this, but if you got to reach over and eat that cookie, at least tell yourself, that cookie is good for me. Don't keep putting bad juju into your system. Every time you say, that's bad, and you go ahead and do it anyway, what are you doing? You're telling your body, that's something bad, and I just stuck that in my body. If you tell your body that's good, that's going to be good for me, it's going to help me, then you're putting positive things in. And even though, you probably shouldn't eat that cookie, probably way too many carbs, there may be a lot of things, but don't put the negative connotation with the food in your body.
Let's talk real quick before we shut it down about food insurance. So food insurance is my kind of funny thing for supplements, a multivitamin, a mineral, an essential fatty acid. What are your recommendations on food insurance, and do you have a favorite? And what are you taking? So I guess there's 3 questions to that.
I guess my thing is a multivitamin, multimineral, vitamin D, some type of a fish oil or oil in your system is probably the basic bottom line things to do. And then and the other thing that I would add would something that supports the liver or digestion, basically, or your big things. And then if you have a problem or a condition that requires additional things, then you can add those things to that. But as far as
you
just
have your baseline 4 or 5 things.
Baseline, you just some general nutrition baseline things for you to do. And that's kind of what I do is I pretty much have kind of a baseline, vitamin, minerals, fish oil, and then of course I take a supplement depending on the season.
Yeah, I've known you've done this.
So during the winter, which is the kidney season, I'll take I'll take either Renatrophin or Renafood to help support the kidneys, because this is when I'm come spring I'll look at more liver issues. During the summer, I want to support the heart and the small intestine. And in the fall, it's the spleen and stomach. And in the, late summer, and then fall is, lung, large intestines. So that's usually when we see the most colds and flus and things. So I want to support that by some pneumotrophin or something to help support that system during that time of year.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming and just visiting with us. Hopefully it wasn't too painful. I mean, I thought it was pretty fun.
No, it was a good time.
All right.
Thank you very much.
So you guys, we are doing segments, we call it Band of Healers, and I'm just wanting different healthcare providers to come in and just have a discussion on health, on the rules, on what they wish people knew, on, the pathway and what that experience has been like. And I don't know, I don't want to speak for Dr. Nelson, but I really enjoy, it's fulfilling to do what I do. I like coming to the office. Now I have hobbies and things outside the office to de-stress, mostly, to deal with the motor, which I like that. And that helps me to get grounded. And so anybody listening to that, get, de-stressed, grounded, feed your battery, which is your kidneys, with water. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. So Dr. West and Dr. Nelson signing out.